In the heart of Africa, a nation was torn apart by the flames of war. A people's quest for independence became a desperate fight for survival. The world watched in silence as humanitarian crisis unfolded. This is the story of the Nigerian Civil War, where the dreams of a nation were shattered by the brutal realities of conflict. A story of courage and sacrifice, of brother turned against brother, and of war that refused to end. The Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafra War, was a defining event in the history of post-colonial Nigeria. The 30-month war led to the death of over 2 million Igbo and Easterners, described as the first black-on-black genocide in post-colonial Africa. The origin of the Civil War may with reasons be traced back across the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorate in 1914 and to the 1964 federal election or to 1965 regional election in the West and the January and June 1966 coup. To understand this, we must go back to the very beginning and bring the connection to play. Before the first amalgamation in 1914, Northern and Southern Nigeria had distinct culture. The North was heavily influenced by Islam, with a strong emphasis on tradition and hierarchy. In contrast, the South had a diverse array of ethnic groups, with varying degree of Western influence. For 14 years, these countries were separately governed by different High Commissioner. Frederick Lugard was British First High Commissioner for Northern Nigeria, and Saraf Moore was his counterpart in Southern Nigeria. British administrators had years after years mentioned the massive culture, political and religious differences between the North and the South, yet they insisted on amalgamation just for economic reasons. The Northern Nigeria had no coastline and was landlocked. It did not receive custom duties as Southern Nigeria did. Northern Nigeria imported goods from Southern Nigeria, and its costs for transporting its goods to Southern Nigeria for export were also high. For Frederick Lugard, the solution to these problems lay in Southern Nigeria. Amalgamating the two Nigeria into one country would not only solve this problem for him, but carried with it a potential promotion, in that he would become the governor of the newly amalgamated country. It was after this merger, on January 1914, that many of the rivalries that were later to explode into conflict were fostered. As Nigeria prepared for independence, the British worked out an arrangement which divided Nigeria into three geopolitical regions, in which a disproportionately large northern region was united with two smaller eastern and western regions that were created by splitting southern Nigeria into two. The Hausa Fulani were dominant in the north, the Yoruba in the west, and the Igbo in the east. Under the parliamentary system of government inherited at independence, with a larger land area and population, the northern region gained more seats in the federal legislature, allowing them to dominate a national politics. Nigeria's ethnic group began to assert their own national identities, leading to a rise in ethnic nationalism. Political parties began to form along ethnic lines, further entrenching division. When the Northerners formed a political party, they named it the Northern People's Congress. There was no party in the North that had a nationalistic outlook. In the East, the National Council of Nigerian Citizens, formed by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, was to promote the political interests of the people of the Southeast. The Action Group Party was formed and led by Obafemi Awolowo for the political interests of the people of the Southwest. In order to form a national government, a coalition was needed because no single party had a majority in the federal legislature. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe's National Council of Nigerian Citizens formed a coalition with the Northern People's Congress, led by Ahmadu Bello. The coalition was formed on basis of power-sharing agreement, where the MPC would hold the Prime Minister position, while the NCNC would hold the ceremonial president position. The Yoruba Aligned Action Group Party, which was headed by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, played the opposition party. With the entrepreneurial nature of the Igbo, they began to spread out of southeast into other regions of Nigeria in search of all the opportunities their new country has to offer. They began to build businesses and establishing new industries in the places they migrated to. Regional leaders began to protect their privileges. The South complained of Northern domination, and the North feared that Igbo were bent on capturing power and dominating the region they migrated to. In the West, the government has fallen apart in 1962, and a boycott of the federal election of December 1964 brought Nigeria to the brink of breakdown. Conflicts were endemic. The point of no return was reached in January 1966, when most Nigerians began to lose confidence with the ruling elite for their lavish lifestyle. Rumors of corruption and non-transparency in government business dealing began to spread. To save the country from total collapse, a group of army officers, majority of who were of Igbo origin, attempted to overthrow the federal government. Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, along with the Premier of the West, Chief Akintola, and the Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello, were all assassinated. Several senior military officers of mostly northern extraction were also killed in their various locations. Suspiciously, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the ceremonial president of Nigeria, survived the coup as he was on holiday abroad. A military administration was set up under Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, the head of the Nigerian army, who was also of Igbo origin.
In the region, there will be military government under a military governor, assisted by an advisor who is the last person to hold the office of the regional governor. The normal function of government in each region will be carried on by the permanent secretaries in the region, and they will be directly responsible to the military government there. The regional military government are directly responsible to the head of the federal military government and the supreme commander of the armed forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Public corporations and other statutory bodies, such as local government, will continue to function under the appropriate ministries. All existing laws, regulations, orders, and official instructions remain in force, wherever applicable, until either modified or abrogated by the federal military government.
His plans to abolish the regions and impose a unitary government met with anti-Igbo riots in the north. The military intervention worsened the political situation as the army itself split under ethnic lines. There was massive suspicion that the coup was done on tribal lines because the main actors of the coup were Igbo and the majority of the victims were from the north. In July 1966, northern officers led by Major Theophilus Danjuma and Murtala Muhammad staged a counter-coup, which Aguiyi Ironsi was assassinated, and Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon came to power. The crisis was compounded by intercommunal clashes in the north and threats of secession in the east by the Igbo. Gowon's attempt to hold a conference to settle the constitutional future of Nigeria was abandoned after a series of ethnic massacres in October 1966. Thousands of Igbos were massacred. A further 1 million Igbo fled the northern region and returned back to the east. A last-ditch effort to save the country was made in January 1967 when the eastern delegation, led by Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, agreed to meet Gowon on neutral grounds at Aburi, Ghana. Aburi was chosen as venue because Ojukwu's safety could not be guaranteed anywhere within the western and northern part of the country. The discussion that followed during the meeting produced possibly the best documented constitutional debate in history. It covers a core idea about the power balance between the central and regional administration of the federation. It appears that Ojukwu, an orator by nature, was made for the stage of Aburi. He was at his best during the proceedings. The non-military observers at the Aburi could not have missed the fact that Ojukwu was clearly the star of the show. Everyone wanted to please and concede to him. Using his emotional skill and intellectual abilities, Ojukwu was able to persuade other colonels that in order to keep Nigeria united as a country, each constituent region needed to move a little apart from one another. They all agreed to regional autonomy and called for the overturn of all the decrees passed after the January 15 coup. Ojukwu managed to get virtually everything he wanted and was so pleased by his success that he even declared that he would serve under Gowon if Gowon kept to the agreement reached. Upon returning to Nigeria, The situation worsened, however, after differences developed over the interpretation of the accord. The federal military government promulgated a decree dividing the 4 regions into 12 states, including 6 in the north and 3 in the east, in an attempt to break the power of the regions. On May 30, 1967, after a meeting with the Eastern Region Consultative Assembly, Ojukwu declared the secession of Eastern Region with the name the Republic of Biafra. The secession of Biafran Republic meant that the entire Eastern Region, under Igbo leadership and dominance, seceded from the rest of Nigeria. The Nigeria's federal government interpreted this as an act of rebellion, and fighting broke out in early July. Within weeks, the conflict had escalated into full civil war. The next 2 years were marked by stiff resistance in the shrinking Biafran enclave and by heavy casualties among civilians, as well as in both armies. Peacemaking attempts by the Organization of African Unity, the Pope and others were ineffective. Biafra gained recognition from African states of Ivory Coast, Gabon, Tanzania and Zambia. Several countries maintained diplomatic relations with Biafra without formal recognition. France provided significant military and economic aid. The United Kingdom and the Soviet Union sent arms to the federal government. Biafra also received aid from international organizations for its population, which was suffering from starvation. On May 12, 1969, with increased international pressure on Nigeria to end the war, the Nigerian authorities announced a change of commanders in the 3 divisions of the army. Colonel Olusegun Obasanjo, who was the new general officer commanding 3rd Marine Commando, launched Operation Tailwind on December 22, 1969, and within 21 days, swept through one Biafran stronghold after another. Owerri was recaptured on January 9, while Uli and Ihiala fell shortly afterwards. By January 12, 1970, Biafran leader Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu fled the country as Nigerian forces closed on his location. Ojukwu left behind his deputy, Philip Effiong, who would later surrender to Nigerian forces on January 15, 1970.
And I would like, therefore, to take this opportunity to say that I, Major General Philip Effiong, officer administering the government of the Republic of Biafra, now wish to make the following declaration. That we affirm we are loyal Nigerian citizens and accept the authority of the Federal Military Government of Nigeria. That we accept the existing administrative and political structure of the Federation of Nigeria. That any future constitutional arrangement will be worked out by representatives of the people of Nigeria. That the Republic of Biafra hereby ceases to exist.
The Biafra War that ravaged the eastern region of Nigeria left in its wake a trail of devastation and death. Estimates suggested that over 1 million people lost their lives, a staggering number that represents the worst humanitarian crisis of its time. 1 million mothers, fathers, sons and daughters gone, 1 million dreams shattered, and 1 million futures unfulfilled.